There was a priest named Zechariah and his wife Elizabeth, and both of them were righteous in the sight of God, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. But they were childless because Elizabeth was not able to conceive, and they were both very old. Already, there is so much in this paragraph. We have, I don't know, I want us all to take a minute and picture for a second that for some reason we are mentioned in the Bible. You're mentioned. Is the sentence that comes after your name, observing all the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly? That's not what's going to come after my name. It's hard to even think about a day when I observe all of the Lord's commands and decrees blamelessly. There are a lot of them. And I'm not a biblical scholar, but I think there were even more back then. And so this is a pretty incredible sentence that Zechariah and Elizabeth did this. And then it's followed by the sentence, but they were childless, because Elizabeth was not able to conceive. And so after showing us this amazing couple that do things I can't even imagine, we're then introduced to this really sad fact about their life. And it's yet another example of something we see all the time, which is the sorrows and joys of our life don't line up with how well we're following the commands and decrees of God. And with this specific sadness for Elizabeth and Zechariah, I think it's something that many people in this room can relate to. Either we've at some point tried to conceive a child and maybe had trouble, or we know someone close to us has gone through this. And the specific sadness of this, of every month kind of being hopeful, maybe this time it's going to happen. And then every month losing that hope. For years, Zechariah and Elizabeth go through this, and it hurts. And now they're old, and they think it's not, they're pretty sure it's not going to happen at this point. And so maybe it isn't an acute pain, but it's something they think about every once in a while, that what if? And it's still there for them. Well, that's where we meet them, and that's just the first couple of sentences of this really rich story. Then Zechariah, who is a priest, it's his turn to go in and light incense in the church. And he goes in, and an angel appears. And the angel says to him, "Do not be afraid, Zechariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth, for he will be great in the sight of the Lord." And Zechariah asked the angel, "How can I be sure of this? I am an old man, and my wife is well along in years." Not the right answer. The angel said to him, "I am Gabriel. I stand in the presence of God, and I have been sent to speak to you and tell you this good news." Editor's note, but frankly, I don't like your attitude. Back to the Bible. "And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens, because you did not believe my words, which will come true at their appointed time." Well, can we really blame Zechariah? If we look into our own hearts and think about that secret longing, not our humble longings of being happy with our friends and families, but that secret longing, that one we don't even tell other people about because it's too fantastic. Like when we think about the one who got away, or that novel we were always hoping we'd publish, or how we pretend that we're rock stars in our cars, but don't ever really get that chance. Maybe it's just me, but we all have these fantastic dreams, and then an angel appears and says, that dream is gonna come true. Well, can we blame Zechariah when he says, "How can I be sure? I've been disappointed so many times. Can you give me a sign?" Well, no. The angel says, "No, I can't." And in fact, it's hard to read this piece of dialogue and not kind of see it as a curse, right? And now you will be silent and not able to speak until the day this happens. And then the Bible does what the Bible often does, where there's sort of an ellipses, and a couple of paragraphs later, the child is born. But I want us to pause and read into that ellipses. What were those 9 or 10 months like living under the angel's curse? So I'm going to riff on what I think a few of these moments might look like, but I invite you to think of your own moments from your own experience of what you think this time might have been like for Zechariah. So maybe for the first few days, you're still away from your family. In the story, he's still off with the other priests, and you're just feeling sorry for yourself. You're worried that maybe you made God angry, so you don't want to mention the angel's prophecy to Elizabeth in case it's not true anymore, and you can't see or get her hopes up again for nothing. And so you cry at night, but you don't make a sound. And somehow, this frees you up to cry even deeper, in a way you never have as an adult, like you are pouring out years of sorrow in front of God. But you come home and you do tell Elizabeth, and she immediately believes and praises God. And you marvel at her faith, because she didn't even see an angel. She just saw you and a hasty message you'd scrawled on a tablet. And you thank God for Elizabeth, who has taught you time and time again how to be a better version of yourself. And you both cry this time, but from joy. And you notice that it looks just like the other kind of crying, that it still feels like pouring yourself out in front of God. Then Elizabeth goes into confinement for 5 months, and when she comes out, she's about 6 months into her pregnancy, and you are amazed at her transformation. But maybe she comes to you scared and sad, and she says that she's worried, because even though this is the thing she's been waiting for and longing for, she's scared that she won't be good at it, that she'll fail her child. She's worried because she's older. She's already imagining all of the times she won't be there to protect her son or daughter. And you want to tell her not to worry, because the angel promised you that your son would be a great man. And you want to tell her not to worry because you've known since the day you met her that she would be an amazing mother. But you can't say any of this. So you just hold her and try to help her feel your steadiness. Try to give back to her some of the gifts she's given you, the gift of her faith and the gift of this child. Then Mary comes, and Elizabeth tells you that from the moment she heard Mary's voice, the child in her womb seemed to leap and dance, proclaiming the Son of God as if his sole purpose in life were to do so. And now, doubt has washed from Elizabeth's face, and she seems somehow stronger than you've ever seen her be. Maybe the strength has always been there, and you just didn't notice. Or maybe Elizabeth finally understands the angel's prophecy that you haven't been able to fully communicate, and it's given her strength. After Mary leaves, the child is born, and you are struck by the paradox of wonder, that this is a miracle that has happened to every person who has ever lived, because we've all been born. We've all experienced the wonder of going to bed as 2 and waking as 3. And yet, the frequency never seems to lessen the sense that a miracle is happening in our lives. Every baby is a miracle baby. So on the 8th day, they came to circumcise the child, and they were going to name him after Zachariah. But his mother spoke up and said, no, he's to be called John. And they said to her, well, there's no one among your relatives who has that name. Everyone has an opinion about baby names. Then they made signs to his father to find out what he would like to name the child. He asked for the writing tablet, and to everyone's astonishment, he wrote, his name is John. Immediately his mouth was opened, and his tongue set free, and he began to speak, praising God. Zechariah is the story of a man who could observe all of the Lord's commands and decrees, but could not receive the wonder of God's love when it was before him. what about all of us? If a messenger comes to you in church or elsewhere and says, wondrous things will happen to you, will you receive this love? Or do you need a few weeks, a few months of silence to wake to the wonders of God and to the miracles in your own life? And if it's the latter, maybe we can use these weeks of Advent to reflect in silence and try to see the wonders that are all around us and the wonders that God has in store for each one of us.